Hello, this is Danielle Geppel, Event Coordinator with Trade Press Media Group. Thanks for joining us today for today's webcast, School Cleaning and Disinfecting Best Practices for a Safe and Healthy Environment. Our presenters today are Craig Hammondtree and John Levulis. Craig currently oversees operations for Openworks as a National Operations Manager. Craig has over 25 years of management experience garnered in a variety of industries, including IT, customer service, sales and business development, small business startups, operations, and project management. John Levulis has been a waxy chemical specialist supporting the Western U.S. since 2009. Prior to joining Waxy, John worked for Diversity as a district manager. Today's webcast learning objectives include: review the key elements of preparing educational facilities for reopening, understand the importance of developing a comprehensive, shareable school reopening plan, and receive guidance on communicating new facility procedures and protocols to staff, students, parents, and community. Before we get started with today's webcast, I'd like to cover a few details about today's event. A live question and answer session will follow today's presentation. To submit questions, please navigate to the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and type in your questions. Our presenters will answer as many questions as time permits. Today's event will also include multiple choice polling questions. Your input in these questions is greatly appreciated. You will receive a PDF copy of today's presentation slides about 24 hours after the conclusion of today's event. You will also receive a link to a brief online assessment. Upon successful completion of this assessment, you will receive your CEU certificate. Today's webcast will be archived at facilitiesnet.com/webcast. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Craig.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And just want to welcome everybody here. And as we learn about different things that COVID-19 has done and then drastically has altered our lives in the way that we work, the way we socialize. And we'll be looking at some of those things today. Go to the next slide, please. So today's agenda, we'll be looking at different things like CDC recommendations. We'll be looking at what educators have told us, expectations that they're looking for when we're in the schools and what they're expecting. We'll take a brief overview of Openworks and what we've been able to accomplish over this time period with COVID and on our cleaning and disinfectant services. And as we said, we'll answer any questions that you have towards the end. Next slide, please. So as we look at the virus, I want to kind of help set the stage on how cleaning and disinfecting your facility has changed between the coronavirus pandemic. We put together a few facts here that you can see. You know, COVID is transmitted through the air and by touching contaminated surfaces. A lot of these surfaces are plastic 1 to 3 days, stainless steel 1 to 3 days, cardboard 24 hours. It is, finding out new things all the time. The CDC is always putting out some different information as they learn more about this virus. And other viruses, not even just the COVID, but if you look at even the flu virus, can live up to surfaces for 48 hours. And that's just not the flu and COVID, that's other viruses as well. We're trying to fight all of this at once, but COVID has really brought our attention to the issues that we have when it comes to disinfecting, especially in a school setting with all of the children. Next slide, please. So CDC recommendations for protection, to combat the control, the spread of COVID, the Center of Disease Control has listed 6 recommendations, which all of us are kind of familiar with. We've been kind of working on washing our hands, but, putting out there that 20 seconds with soap and water, avoid contact, close contact, stay the 6 feet away, cover the mouth and nose with a mask. If you're close, if you're by yourself, make sure that you're not coughing into your hands, coughing into your sleeve. Cleaning and disinfectant daily is something that needs to be occurring a lot more now than before. But like I said, with the virus of the flu and others, it's always nice to make sure that we're taking care of the kids, we're taking care of our faculty, and also monitoring your health daily. We want to make sure that, if you're feeling sick, make sure that you're staying at home. It's important to make sure you're taking your temperature if you're not feeling well, if you feel something coming on, because the different symptoms within COVID have ranged from, runny nose to, ventilators. I mean, there's a wide gamut of ways that people feel sick when it comes to this. But today we'll be focusing on how we prepare your school to be properly cleaned and disinfected to meet the CDC and EPA guidelines by looking at some of the best practices and recommendations from the industry experts. So for our first polling question, we kind of want to find out from you is what areas of your school are you focusing your cleaning and disinfection efforts on? As we look at this, cleaning and disinfecting your school is an integral part of reopening and ongoing facility plans. So making sure we're going to look at different types of plans, designing those. These are things that you need to work on with your cleaning department to make sure that you're looking at everything that we can to make sure that, like I said, once again, keeping our kids and our faculty safe, and parents as well. Okay, good. Door handles, handrails, drinking fountains, yeah. Okay. So let's look at this a little bit different. Cleaning and disinfecting best practices for schools. So a lot of people, as this pandemic has arose, people kind of look at, you can ask a question about cleaning. Step one is cleaning. A lot of people in their mind feel that cleaning is disinfecting, when necessarily that is not the case. Cleaning is a physical action of removing dust. It's debris. It's getting it off the desks, the doorknobs, the sinks, everything. Disinfecting means you're applying a disinfectant product, chemical that can kill at least 99.99% of the bacteria and viruses on the surfaces. Surfaces usually need to remain wet longer. There's a dwell time, anywhere from 1 to 10 minutes, and each one of your products that you use will tell you what the dwell time is on the label. If a disinfectant or a surface is dirty, the disinfectant is not going to work as well. It has to, get to the surface that it's actually going to. So we want to make sure that we are doing a cleaning step before the disinfectant. We have to remove the soil, the dirt, the dust, anything that's on the surface, so to make sure that the disinfectant can do its job. So it is a two-step process when it comes to that. Next slide, please. So recently we did I think it was back in August, we did a survey of 200 educators to understand what areas of their schools they are most concerned about protecting, and to better understand how they plan to maintain a safe and healthy environment for the teachers, staff, and parents as they come through the building. As you might imagine, nearly every area of school of that educator feel that some prone germs are required regular cleaning and disinfecting. So as you can see here on the example that we have, bathrooms is the number one. Buses were even brought up as well. Cafeteria, computer labs when you have all the keyboards and things like that. So there's a lot of different areas that we have to make sure that we're touching and that we're disinfecting, cleaning and disinfecting, not just disinfecting. So I'm sure you can look at this table here and you can see a lot of areas that you can probably add to that, that Martin, not even up on here. So next slide, please. So as we look at a cleaning service, there is a lot of different variety out there that you can look at. There's mom and pops out there that just started. There are people out there that are just they grab a bottle and a rag and they go to town and they have a cleaning company. But it takes a lot of time and effort to put in behind the people that you're using for a reputable cleaning company. It is so important right now. It has always been, but especially right now with COVID-19, the flu virus coming up as well. But you want to look at a cleaning professional company that has a reputation, the one that has been around a while, one that has defined cleaning and disinfectant procedures. It is so important that there's steps that have to be taken and have to be done right. Training and certifications. There are different certifications out there with GVAC, with ISSA. There's different ways of doing things. Chemicals, the way that they work, we have to make sure that we use them right. Bloodborne pathogen trainings, they're all out there. But we want to make sure that your cleaning company that you're using has these certifications. And if asked, they can show them to you. You know, you want to make sure that you're looking at a cleaning professional company that has experience in your industry. You know, we cleaning companies do everything from office buildings to medical to schools to you name it, anything that needs to be cleaned. But we want to make sure that the people that are cleaning the schools have experience. They've done this before. They know exactly when they walk in, what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and if it's not being done correctly, then the change. A communication between you and your cleaning company is so important, because if you're not happy, then you want to make sure you relay that to them, that the communication is open. Communication with your cleaning company is so important. You know, logbooks, whether that's, you know, putting in your information, but making sure that they're there and it's a working partnership. It's so important when you find a service provider. Next slide, please. So as we look at the school calendar, there's different things that we have to determine. The annual school facility clean and disinfectant plan. Believe it or not, this is something that needs to be done on probably a quarterly basis, because we have different things happening, you know, throughout the year. We have to look at, you know, floor care. When is that going to be done? We have to look at deep cleanings. You know, we have different times that the schools are open and the schools are closed, whether that's spring break, summer break, winter break. What can we get done during this time? You know, is it, like I said, deep cleanings? Do we want to do strip and wax and make the floors look really good? Is there power washing things that need to be done? Window washing? So these are plans that you can put into place with your cleaning company and making sure that you're getting the best service that you possibly can, and making sure that with all of the new technology that has come out from COVID-19, that you're utilizing that as well, whether that's electrostatic spraying, fogging, like I said, deep cleaning and deep disinfecting. So distant learning, gosh, a huge thing that has happened over the, you know, over this pandemic. You know, schools have classes that are meeting face to face. They have classes that are remote. So how do you juggle this with your cleaning company? How do you look at them and say, okay, I don't have anybody in the building on this day. You know, we need to move it to this day. We need to move from 3 days a week to 5 days a week because we only have, we're having more kids come back in, or we have to go from 5 to 3 because we're reducing the amount of people that are coming into the school. We're not using these classrooms, whatever it might be. There's different things that come up. And if you're using a hybrid where you have some people coming in, you know, kids coming in at some point, or you have completely distant learning, but the teachers are there, you know, faculty is there, there still has to be some sort of cleaning. So adjusting your scope of work, making sure that it works with your schedule is what your current cleaning company should be open to do and change however you want it to be. I'm going to transition this over to John from Waxy, and take it away, John.
There we go, off mute. High touch areas, let's just dive right into it and get into the next slide. As you can see here, there are a lot of surfaces that we need to think about, and the information right there does tell us a lot. When polls were taken, I think it was 90% of the polls said door handles, 81% drinking fountains, 80% desks. What we're really finding out is that we're getting a better idea and an understanding and better job of educating on what is considered a high-touch surface. But with that said, let's just go on to the next slide and we'll go through the different areas. So here are typical classrooms. You have things like door handles and doorknobs. Those are a little bit interesting when you really want to think about it, because a door knob is more round. A door handle is just that, it's a handle. Oftentimes we clean and disinfect the front of the handle that faces the room, not the back of the handle, where we actually grip it and touch it. Light switches, telephones, computer keyboards, which are really heavily soiled areas, desks, tables, and chairs. What we don't think enough about are those hidden surfaces. Just like that doorknob or that door handle, we don't think about the underside of the desk. And if we're talking about chairs that we have to slide in, we usually grab underneath the chair to hold it while we slide in. We don't think about that underside. So that's really important too. Bookshelves, pencil sharpeners, waste receptacles, it goes on. And what we really should be thinking about is we step into a room, whatever the room is, and we stand there. And years ago, I was trained to do this. Stand at the room at the entrance, look around the room clockwise, left to right, and check, do a survey of all of the touch points. Look at the room. And so you're kind of like Terminator. You're scanning every surface and you're deciding whether it's a high touch point. And if it is, those are the areas we need to clean and disinfect. But in today's world, as we're expanding our knowledge and our dedication to cleaning and disinfecting, we need to look at that as the cleaning side too, not just disinfecting, but unwrapping those objects to look at them 360 degrees, what areas are actually touched, not just the surface, but what else is touched. Those are the areas to clean and disinfect. So those are the common places in a classroom. There could be so many more. It would also depend, for instance, if we're dealing with a special needs classroom, there could be more in there. Moving on to cafeterias, again, doorknobs and handles, light switches, the vending machines, the food prep areas, tables and chairs. Tables and chairs are another one where we really want to look around. Napkin dispensers and those types of things. Those are really things to think about right there. We often don't. You do see up in the upper left-hand corner, it looks like a hand sanitizer. If it's a manual dispenser, we absolutely want to pay attention to that because there's a paddle on it where there is skin contact. So we want to make sure that we get those. Sneeze guards at the stations. Now, right now, there's no serving yourself, but there's still sneeze guards. Those are areas we need to think about. Waste receptacles. And again, anything else that could be identified beyond this list that is a high touch, because every area is just a little bit different. Next slide, please. Restrooms. So restrooms is a really interesting one, and I will share a quick little story. Years ago, we did a survey at a school district. We used the elementary, middle, and high school. We listed the surfaces we were going to test with an ATP meter. We went around, and through each of these schools, they were pretty much the same soil load on each surface. And the area that was the most dirty was actually the handle for the paper towel dispenser. That was the dirtiest of those. So think about a restroom, door handles and doorknobs, light switches again, dispensers, the paper towels, the hand soap, hand sanitizer, seat covers, feminine hygiene, any of the other fixtures, the sinks, where we grab to flush or a button we have to push, showers, toilets, partitions is another one. And not just the handles or the locks on the partitions, but the whole door, because people grab the whole thing. Toilet seats, that is incredibly high touch area. Waste receptacles and anything else that you can find in there. You have handles inside there, or you have rails inside there. We want to clean those. So that's a really big one. So we need to really think. Again, it's about cleaning first, then disinfecting. Next slide. Offices. Offices are no different. Of course, they're not going to have toilets, but you'll have other things in them. And depending on what kind of an office, you might even have, you know, a sort of kitchen area where we have to think of that too. So again, door handles and doorknobs, light switches, telephones, computer keyboards and mouse, desks, tables and chairs, bookshelves, waste receptacles. Now with tables and chairs, especially chairs, oftentimes they're going to be a soft surface. For the state of California, for information for that, the state of California does not recognize soft surface disinfecting. So while we can clean those and go through the motions of those to make it a better surface, the state doesn't recognize soft surface disinfecting. It doesn't mean we shouldn't clean and take care of those. It just means that for those of you in California, it is not recognized. Next slide, please. Athletic facilities. This is a big one because it's not just, we're not just limited to a gymnasium like we see here at the basketball court. We have all kinds of things. So we have doors and handles again, light switches, handrails, chairs and benches and bleachers, dispensers, paper towel, hand soap, hand sanitizer, those types of things, recreation and athletic equipment, lockers, waste receptacles. Let's go back to that recreation athletic equipment. It could be the wrestling room. We have the mats to think of. That's a lot of body contact, a lot of skin contact. What about in the weight rooms? Again, the same kind of thing. A lot of body contact, a lot of skin contact. Now, oftentimes we don't talk about disinfecting floors, but in a wrestling room, the floor is an area to disinfect for sure, because that's where they roll around. We then want to make sure we're using a disinfectant that's going to be safe for skin contact later. Dance rooms, again, the same kind of thing, because dancers roll around on the floors and things like that. So often you don't need to think about disinfecting the floor, but those are areas you may want to think about it depending on the kind of contact you get. Next slide. We're off to polling. So here we are. Are you or will you require your facility and staff to do it yourself, clean and disinfect throughout the day? And we have a 63% on, or 93% on that as a yes. That's interesting information. That's very good to know. And that just means that anybody who's expected to do that would have to be properly trained on cleaning and disinfecting. Products and resources. Let's move on. Okay, I think we have more popping up on the right, don't we? There we go. So do-it-yourself cleaning and disinfecting to where we were talking about there. Types of supplies needed. We definitely want personal protective equipment. We want to make sure we have good cleaners and or disinfectant cleaners. And that just kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, training. There's something we talk about a lot at WACSU, product equipment procedure. And you see it all wrapped up right here. So 77% wearing personal protective equipment and gear. Personal protective equipment is just hugely, hugely important. That is for us to protect us. That is also for us to not spread germs. The mask is for us to not spread germs, but so are the gloves. The gloves protect us from coming in contact with them. And if we do it properly, they help us from spreading those germs. Something I want to touch on with that is a lot of places we've gone to do a lot of trainings this year, we've asked the question, and who changes their gloves out while cleaning a restroom? Not many do. We want to change that focus to actually change your gloves out when cleaning a restroom. And a time to do that would be, for instance, you go into your restroom, you do your quick survey with your eyes, you start work top to bottom. When you're at that point of having to refill the toilet paper, the toilet seat covers, the feminine hygiene, soaps and those things, that's when you want to change your gloves, because your gloves have just been touching all those infected, or what we would assume infected surfaces. We're not going to want to take dirt and germs and move those onto toilet paper, feminine hygiene, and those types of things. That's a good time to change our gloves. By doing that, we're also slowing the spread and migration of these things that could be harmful to people, possible pathogens, onto surfaces that they will come in contact with. So that's a really good thing to understand, is to change out your gloves periodically throughout the day. Hand sanitizer and soap, huge. Washing your hands, sanitizing your hands is hugely important to protect yourself and to slow the spread of any type of germ and pathogen. Next slide. And this one I think is Dave. Well, I'll go ahead. So what's really important is that in this, we want to make sure that we're using disinfectants that are approved on the N list, the EPA N list. And the N list has been a growing list all year long of disinfectants approved to be used as should be effective or are in fact effective against the COVID-19. What we mean by that is that in the beginning, there were no disinfectants that were proven effective against it. The EPA had to test them, and it took a while. It takes a while to do that. So the N list was built of disinfectants that either had a similar virus kill claim on it, or that had a what's called an emerging viral pathogen kill claim. And if it had either of those, it would be put onto the N list. Now, as of July, August, we're starting to see disinfectants with positive, yes, they've been proven against COVID, and they're on there too. So the N list is where you want to look. Some people talk about the CDC disinfectants. No, the CDC is talking about using disinfectants that are approved for it. The approval place is the EPA. This is where we want to go. Next slide. And this is an example of it. For instance, the waxy HP disinfectant cleaner, as a question was asked earlier, can you use a cleaner disinfectant as a one-stop product? You can if it's a lightly soiled surface. This one right here is a cleaner disinfectant, effective against it. It is on the N list. Initially, it was on the N list with a rotavirus kill claim. Then we bumped up and got an emerging viral pathogen kill claim, which knocked it down from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. And now it is on the EPA N list for 60 seconds for COVID. Do remember though, when you read that on the N list, if it says 1 minute for COVID, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the complete efficacy kill claim time. That means it's for that virus. Everything has its own time. So what you want to do, down on the bottom there on this label, you'll see the EPA registration number circled. It's in red. If we go to the next slide, we'll get deeper in that. And what's important to remember when you're looking at the N list, and the bottom part is the N list and where you enter in the information. Oftentimes people will tell me, I entered in your registration number and it's not coming up. All you want to do is enter in the 2 first sets of digits. In this case, it's the 45745-11. That is the EPA registration number. The 45745 is the company's registration who makes that disinfectant. The -11 is that particular formula. That's all they care about. They're not going to list all the sub-registrations like the 14994, which is Waxies. So you'll enter in the 45745-11, and it will give you the information down there. Hydrogen peroxide, company, midlab, rotavirus, norovirus, rhinovirus. Now, this was a contact time of 5 minutes when it was on the 26th of March when it updated, and this went on with the emerging viral pathogen claim. If you do the same thing today, it will be on there for 1 minute for SARS-CoV-2. So it does have a positive, so things do change. But that is the way you want to look at it. If you were to look at another registration number of ours, the 1839-169-14994, you'd want to enter the 1839-169. not the 14994. And that's the same with all disinfectants. It's just those first two sets of digits that you want to be focusing on. Next slide. And with that said, it's really simple. You go there, you right there, go to epa.gov/nlist or list N, or Google EPA nlist. You'll get in there, and then you'll just you can do searches, or you type in the registration number as you see it up there. Again, this time it's 5813-50. That's going to give you all the information you need to know down below for that particular product as it pertains to the coronavirus that we're dealing with today. Next slide. I think we're handing off here.
Yeah, I got it, John. Thanks. So when we look at preparing our community, it's important for the schools to communicate what they're doing, whether you're open or not. You know, if you're doing remote, a hybrid of both, it's letting your community know, what are you doing for your facilities? And, you know, are you preparing for return of students to your classrooms? So those are things that we want to kind of address, and what we found out in some surveys that we have done. So next slide. So we did a survey with a group of our customers in how important it is to follow respective facilities and the safeness and wellness of this. So as you will see here, employee training. This was the #1 important factor for our customers. They wanted to make sure that the crews that were cleaning their facilities were trained properly. They were making sure that the chemicals were down for enough time. Were they cleaning first, then disinfecting? Or making sure that the surfaces were ready? Those types of things. So they wanted to make sure, were they GBAC certified? Were they ISA certified? Did they have all the bloodborne pathogens? Everything that they needed to be the best at their ability. And that was the most important thing. Another 72% of them said that they wanted signage. They wanted to put something on the door that said that this establishment has been disinfected. This establishment had been cleaned and disinfected and is ready for students to come back in. The third there, you will see that it is seeing someone cleaning. So a lot of our schools that we clean at Openworks have added a day porter, someone that is there during the day, while the kids are there, while the faculty's there, not at night. And they're wiping down door handles, just like John was talking about, all the high touch surfaces. We've had a lot of increase in schools requesting a day porter to be in there for cleaning. So some of the time, one of the things that I would recommend too is maybe looking out to your community and doing a survey of yourself to see what's important to your parents of the students. So communication is key. Like we talked about, signage to offer that assurance that, you know, the disinfectant has been completed. Letters or emails to your parents, your students, your staff, letting them know what you're doing to go above and beyond what you have done before. And what we're seeing in a lot of our schools, that what they've started now because of COVID-19, they have planned to carry it on because they see the importance of disinfecting and keeping their kids in school and not being sick. And this extra disinfecting with the high touch points has helped increase that awareness and that reassurance that things are being done. But proper training of the staff, let your parents know, your staff, your faculty know that what training has been done. And if you need training for your faculty, your staff to do DIY cleaning, definitely your cleaning company can help you with that. What products that you should have on hand, how to do it properly, what needs to be done, and what is considered a high touch surface. Next slide, please. So I want to tell you a little bit about Openworks. Next slide. Openworks has been around for 37 plus years. We're based out of Phoenix, Arizona. We have offices across the country. Right now we service over 1,500 customers nationwide. We definitely have been doing this a long time. We've seen a lot of things come and go, a lot of different viruses, a lot of different cleaning techniques, and we put those into practice with our network of elite service providers. And I call them elite because we do a lot of training with them. We make sure that they are on top of everything that's going on in the industry. They use us as a resource. We're there to help train and make sure that everything is being done correctly. Openworks does have a 98% customer retention rate, which is 43% higher than the industry average. So we really take, when we get a customer, we want to make sure that we keep them. We do everything that we can to make sure that we're doing it right, we're doing it safely, and we're making the customer happy. You know, we use all EPA list and approved disinfectants. Just what John was talking about. We make sure that everything comes out. When COVID came out, you know, it was a big making sure that we're using the right products. We made sure with all of our cleaners and crews that we had the right products in the schools, in the buildings, whether it was office, medical, whatever it might be, using the proper PPE. You know, OSHA bloodborne pathogen certifications, that's just one. We have certified all of our cleaners in different areas of disinfecting with all of this coming out, making sure that they're on board with everything and they're doing it properly. GBAC certification, and it's a lot of work to put all of these things together. And I believe Openworks has done a fantastic job in making sure that their cleaners are up to speed. Next slide, please. So as we look at what have we done? What has Openworks done? That's different than what we were doing before because of COVID. We did put together a program. It's called TotalWorks Complete Cleaning and Disinfection System. And if you go to the next slide, it'll kind of give us some more detail as to what that is. So the Sandy services here, we're looking at different things. This is an ongoing program that we've put together. We even have the signage here that we can put out on the door as people walk in. As you saw, 72% of the people we polled said that that was something of importance to them. We look at cleaning all workspaces, commons daily in any one of the Sandys. You'll see some of the differences in what you choose. What we look at this here is do you want it every day, you know, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days, 7 days a week, whatever that might be. But we add these different services that you can talk to one of your Openworks as you reach out to them if you're interested. The next thing that we have that we put together is InfectaGuard and InfectaGuard Plus. So what this is a one-time cleaning that we have put together for maybe a COVID outbreak, you know, maybe a flu outbreak that has happened. But this is what we have put together to make sure we go in, we clean all the services, we do electrostatic, we make sure that the 6-step process for decontamination we follow the GBAC for that. Deep clean service to address and confirm biohazard or COVID-19 case. We make sure that that is taken care of. So we do a complete clean of your facility if there is an outbreak of any kind. Just want to make sure that there is nothing left there so that for the schools, everyone can feel safe about coming back in. So some of the key takeaways that we talked about today, you know, cleaning and disinfecting, the differences between that, the training that goes behind that, high touch services, John talked about that, where we looked at doorknobs, light switches, desktops, anything people touch a lot of. It's so important to make sure that we clean those. You know, products and resources that you have. There are a lot of products out there. Waxy has a great website to look out there. They have a bunch of different products that you can use. But one of the most important thing is communicate. People want to feel safe right now. And a lot of people don't. You know, we're seeing some more outbreaks that are coming out in different areas, more so in others, or more states than others. But we want to make sure we're communicating. We want to let everybody know what we're doing. It's so important to do that. Next slide. So You sat through this presentation, but there are other resources out there. I mean, everyone has been hearing about the CDC. They've been kind of the one speaking the most about how this is transmitted, what you can do, how you can combat this virus and other viruses, but also the EPA, the World Health Organization, ISSA is another great training tools. They have a lot of good training out there on ISSA. OSHA, very important, making sure that we stand up those standards. So there's a lot of resources out there for you to go look at. If your cleaning crew that you currently use does not have the information, you can go get the information yourself. So now I'd like to turn it over for any questions and answers that we can do.
Thank you, Craig. I will go through the list here and let you guys know what we've got. Here's a great question. Craig, can you tell us a little bit about what electrostatic sprayer equipment Openworks is using?
Yeah, so there's different ones out there. There's different manufacturers, but the premise of this, and John, correct me on anything or add anywhere you want to on this, but electrostatic spraying is it almost looks like a super squirter gun that you see, your kids playing with. But what it does is it puts an electric charge onto the disinfectant and basically wraps around any kind of surface that it's adhering to or that you're spraying it onto. Like look at a chair, it sprays the top of the chair, but the electrostatic charge goes underneath, where like you grab your hands at the end of a chair that you put your arms on, you got to make sure you get underneath it because that's where most people touch. So I hope that answered your question. John, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, actually, let me get a little technical and geeky on this if you can.
Okay.
So an electrostatic sprayer, they come in handheld, backpack, or put, casters and roll it with you. They'll be plugged into a grounded outlet or battery operated. And what they do is they literally give an electrostatic charge, a little negative charge to the particles that are in there. And what that means is because everything around us is basically neutral or slightly positive, it's like magnets. When you take the two magnets and they pull together, that's what's happening with this spray that we're putting out there. It wants to gravitate to something within its magnetic reach and cling to it. And what that allows it to do is wrap around objects as long as it's within that magnetic reach. If they're used properly, it will do its job fantastically. And if you were not to charge it, if someone have an on-off for the electrostatic charging, in that case, if you turn it off, it's just a great applicator, but the magic happens when it wraps around for a couple of reasons. One, keyboards. Who wants to take a trigger sprayer and just squirt like crazy on keyboards? You don't want to, it's electronics. With this, you lay a fine mist, very fine mist, that clings to the keyboards. Unless I were to hold that electrostatic sprayer right above the keyboards and just go at it without moving it, then I'm making it heavy. But just a fine mist across, clings to the surface, vertical or horizontal. There you go.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. I think this is probably a question that you both can answer, so I'll throw it to Craig first. This is an issue that we've had come up periodically. Craig, during the first wave of COVID-19, there was a definite supply chain issue with PPE, chemical disinfectants, et cetera. Now that we're further along in the pandemic process and cases are rising, are we anticipating any repeat occurrences of supply chain issues?
As far as John will probably know more because he does distribute, but as far as I have seen so far, there hasn't been a shortage because we've had some, like Chicago is an area that I cover. They're having a lot of outbreaks there currently, and I have not seen any shortage. But John, you might have a better understanding of that.
Yeah, I will. So when it all started, China, which supplies so much of the world, was already shut down for Chinese New Year. Then you got the virus and they're shut down for a couple of months. And so it put the world at a complete halt. and scramble. Where do we get these things that aren't on a boat coming from China like they're supposed to be? There's that part of it. Then there's the uptick in demand that went through the roof. And so now there was in fact a supply issue and raw material issue. That also made disinfectants, quaternary disinfectants. There's a key raw material that's coming from China. That caused a problem. We're not there right now. And unless we have a really, really bad wave coming up here in the fall, winter, I don't anticipate anything being too bad. But also a lot of companies have started doing their own production here because of that. And it takes about a year to get that up and going. So they're pretty close to starting to flip that switch to opening their facilities for production here for a lot of those things like gloves and liners and wipes and things like that. When it comes to disinfectants, there is a key raw material ingredient that comes from China that did put the world at a real peril trying to find enough quat out there for us. But what there is not a shortage of is hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. It's basically water with one more oxygen molecule added to it. So that's everywhere, and that's not a problem. So I really have been all year long focusing people on hydrogen peroxide disinfectants.
Great, thank you. Along the same lines, when we're talking about electrostatic sprayers, are the chemicals that are used in the sprayer approved by the EPA or CDC?
So we always want to use an EPA. Let's get CDC removed from that. They're not part of the equation. All they say is use an EPA approved chemical. So let's just look at the N list. And really, here's one of those areas where it's a tough one. Quats are not the healthiest. They were better than bleach. They were better than phenolics, but they're not the healthiest disinfectants. And with that said, we really don't want to put those into a fine atom and spray them everywhere because they do cause respiratory issues. I would lean towards something that creates a safe chlorine solution. So there are chlorine products out there that are not bleach. Bleach is not a stable chlorine. There are others out there that create a hypochlorous acid solution. Our bodies create hypochlorous acid to help us defend our bodies from germs. So that's a good one to use, or peroxides are good ones to use, but they still have to be on the EPA N list to be effective against this virus.
Great, thank you. Craig, I think this is one that is up your alley. Does Openworks make the school administrators empty and dispose of personal items in lockers before disinfecting, or is that something that the professional cleaning team will do?
Yeah, if it's personal items, we really don't want to touch anything that's personal. I mean, obviously, to move everything out of there is important to get a good disinfectant, especially like in a locker. But anything personal, we ask that the owner of the property remove it.
Great, thank you. John, you touched on this a bit earlier, so this might be one you can provide a little more insight on. Are there equipment or products that can actually disinfect carpets and office chair upholstery, soft surfaces?
So soft surface disinfecting in most states is recognized. The product has to have on the EPA master label, which what that means is when a product is submitted to the EPA from a company to be tested, they tell the EPA how they want it to be tested. Because for every test done, for every virus, for every germ, for every fungus, for every mildew that they test, and for every way of use, they have to pay a lot of money. So it has to be on that master label that the EPA sends back to that company. And then in some of them, if you look at the master label, it might say effective for carpet and upholstery, and it tells you how to use it, but there'll be an asterisk at the bottom that says not for the state of California. So some states, like California, I think is the only one right now, do not recognize soft surface disinfecting. So you can go through the motions. You could say you've used it, a disinfectant on it. You can say you've sanitized it, But what you can't claim is that you disinfected it with a registered disinfectant for a soft surface.
Great, thank you. John, this might also be good for you. Any concerns about the amount of chemicals being used universally for cleaning and disinfecting? There's technology available that an all natural aqueous solution can do both without the use of chemicals. I'm sure that's
Yes.
very
Yes.
important in education.
That's an important one to know. Those aqueous solutions out there, they're not snake oil, they're legit, but what they're not is they're not cleaners. They're really not cleaners because they're still just, unless it's some of those solutions that add chemistry to it, what they are is a water that's been charged. And because of that, it does have the ability to sanitize or disinfect for a certain length of time, generally not over 24 hours. So you have to keep remixing that solution. And with that said, you still have to make sure that it's on the EPA N list. If it's not on the EPA N list, you can't use it. Here's the thing. The biggest thing to remember is we do want a cleaning detergent package in our cleaners and even our disinfectants. And the reason why is very simple. There's a thing called surface tension in water. That doesn't change in any of these aqueous solutions unless they add a chemical to it. And what that means is water doesn't have the ability to flow. This gets into the geek chemistry, but basically water pulls together. If you look at it in outer space, it forms a ball and it pulls to the center being its center of gravity, a magnetic pull inwards. And if you just put water, if you were just to try this, take some filtered water, pour it onto a cardboard box, it won't soak right into the cardboard. It will sit on top of it and it will form a dome. That's because of that surface tension. That gives you a problem when cleaning. Surface tension doesn't allow your chemical to run, so you need a surfactants. Surfactants are called surface active agents, and what they do is they make water wetter by allowing it to flow. There's also a second use to surfactants. They are positive and negatively charged at one and the other. And the other end, what it does is it actually pulls and attracts soils and grimes and lifts them and suspends them into your water. So surfactants do two things for us that you won't find in a pure aqueous solution. And then there are chelating agents. They also perform a very important role too to aid the surfactants. So I will always argue that using something with a safe chemistry is better when we're talking about cleaning and disinfecting in one time.
Wonderful, thank you. Craig, has there been any discussion or review or recommendation about disinfecting mechanical ductwork or any process or product that is more appropriate for this application?
Yeah, that has been discussed, and there was some research I was looking at just not too long ago about air quality and air purification, things like that, the UV lights, things like that that you can do. I'm not 100% on that because it is something that has been just brought up recently. But John, I don't know if you've heard anything. I know you're kind of in the know on those types of things.
So UV is very effective, but it's kind of like this. It's like a suntan. You don't get tan where the sun don't shine, and where that light don't shine, it don't disinfect. So basically, if you're trying to do a surface and some of the touch surface isn't being hit by the light, then it's not disinfecting it. So it's not like it bounces all around the room. It doesn't fog the room and fill the room. It has to hit the surface for that length of time as described by them for it to be effective. So I'm not the biggest fan of UV. I recognize its safety. I recognize its usefulness, but it's a pretty time-consuming and expensive solution.
Yeah, I've seen it where it's been entered into the HVAC systems where it processes and goes, the air's passed through that, like through the A coil, things of that, and as it hits that, it's disinfecting, it's killing any germs, viruses, things like that. As far as using it to go around the room, but as far as air quality, I have seen it used in that. I actually use it in my house here, and you wouldn't be able to know, but it, the claims are just some extra for communicating to your faculty, your staff, your parents, things like that, are things that you're taking in consideration. But we can definitely get some more information for you if you like on that air quality. I know that there was a big study on that where I was looking at it was in Seattle, Washington, and I can definitely get some more information if needed.
Thank you. Back to our discussion about soft surfaces. What about using infrared with soft surfaces?
That's going to go right back to the state. If it is recognized and it's approved by the EPA, then you're good to go. But again, the state of California, they recognize nothing. And they have their reasons that are sound. It makes sense to me, but that's just what it is. So anything that is a registered disinfectant in that state approved for that use, you're okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, one of the things I forgot to mention too is that, you know, when we looked at our resources, those are, you know, national resources. You definitely have to look at your state recommendations and what the health administrator there is saying that needs to happen. So every state is different. So just make sure that you're checking that as well.
Fantastic. I think we have addressed the bulk of our questions this afternoon, depending on your time zone. So with that, I will hand it back. Thank you all for your participation, for joining us today, and I'll hand it back over to Trade Press to wrap things up.
Thanks for that great information, Craig and John. Just a reminder, attendees will receive a PDF copy of today's presentation slides about 24 hours after the conclusion of today's event, along with a link to a CEU assessment. Today's webcast was recorded and can be reviewed at facilitiesnet.com/webcast. Thanks everyone for attending and enjoy the rest of your day.